Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast.
Welcome to the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. I am TC Ricks, and I'm here to do a one-shot episode breaking my Sins of Silicon Valley or Mommary's presentation because of some frankly unbelievable bullshit that I've seen. And I want to throw a hypothetical exercise out there. What if Germany had not made the Nazi Party illegal, and that they, since World War II, had been a minority, but due to Russian propaganda, had achieved levels similar to what they had prior to World War II? So maybe getting as high as maybe 14% or even 20% in some local elections. Now, I want you to imagine that an expose comes out that shows that they have every intention of taking over Germany again and initiating a Fourth Reich. But apparently it was only 80% of their membership and 80% of their leadership, and that there was a moderate wing of the Nazi Party that worked well with others and believed more in the better parts of the Nazi Party, like making the trains run on time or, their firm educational and pro-science policies, right? So I want you to imagine European newspapers celebrating the moderate Nazis for their willingness to work with other parties and their courage at repudiation of their more radical colleagues, right? It sounds pretty fucking stupid, doesn't it? I mean, at some point, what kind of a fucking idiot is a member of the Nazi Party unless you're a fucking Nazi, right? One of my favorite sayings that I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years is a German one that says, what do you call a table of 10 people that sit down to dinner with a Nazi? Nazis. The fact of the matter is that if you associate with Nazis, at some point, you're pretty much a fucking Nazi. If you sympathize with Nazis, you're basically a fucking Nazi. Now, I want to turn to the hero of the mainstream media and moderate Democrats known as Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, the guy who tied a dog to the roof of his car, the guy that basically believes in theocracy, and the guy who is essentially a used card salesman for venture capitalism and is a poster child for everything that is wrong with capitalism. And this is a guy who basically brought up Benghazi in a debate with Obama that kept coming up and up and up and was ultimately one of the sources of the email bullshit that caused the head of the FBI 2 weeks before an election to reveal, we found a laptop that may have some evidence on it in, the spirit of full disclosure, to cause Donald Trump to be elected. In other words, Mitt Romney is a direct contributor to the election of Donald Trump. And let's also talk about another moderate Republican who is the cause célèbre of the mainstream media. Senator Murkowski said, hey, we might have gone too far. Maybe it's time we show our convictions instead of being afraid of the majority of our party. So the thing is that Senator Murkowski voted to acquit Trump. The Republican Party, en masse, has supported putting kids in cages. They have nominated fascist judges selected by the Fascist Federalist Society, which believes in dominionism, which is essentially a Christianist philosophy which believes in imposing a theocracy and imposing the second coming of Jesus Christ by setting up righteous people. They are in sync with Fox News, which lies. The Republican Party calls the virus a hoax and has proposed and promoted Trump's pushing of snake oil ineffective medicines which do nothing to treat the vaccine. They have acquitted him of charges of corruption, not only for Ukraine and basically threatening an ally to withhold money illegally if they didn't help him implicate a political opponent. But on top of all this, and by the way, I want to come back to kids in cages, because quite frankly, if you put kids in cages and you're okay with that, you're a fucking Nazi, right? There comes a point at which a political party is so corrupt, so evil, and so inept that we need to socially equate them to the Nazi fucking party, right? You know, the argument that, well, you know, the Republicans haven't set up death camps, and until they do that, they haven't crossed the line. Well, you know what? I want you to Google COVID camps and find out about what they've done to homeless people who they are worried might be carrying the virus. I want you to look up the treatment of illegal immigrants in camps. And, you know, if you hear anybody say, well, they broke the law, so that's okay, that's what a Nazi would say. That is literally what a Nazi would say. In other words, a Nazi would say, well, you know, those gypsies or homosexuals or Jews came into our country illegally, and so it's okay to put them in camps. Seriously. That is exactly what a fucking Nazi would say. When you hear somebody say, well, you know, I support black rights, but, you know, the looting is just, and rioting is just bad, right? So when they're more worried about a fucking window than they are about the treatment of a human being, or when they say all lives matter, then that is by definition the only lives that don't matter, right? To me, all lives do matter. Absolutely. Black lives matter, all lives matter, except for people that say all lives matter. If you say all lives matter, when somebody says black lives matter, your life doesn't matter. Because you know what? You're a Nazi. And I don't give a shit about Nazis. The reason that the Republican Party is putting up Antifa as the boogeyman is because Antifa stands for anti-fascism. And unlike a lot of centrists or moderate Democrats who sit on their butts and clutch their pearls and dab their forehead with their lace doilies, which were previously called limousine liberals, right? These people are in the street protesting right up with the Black Lives Matter people and have not tolerated Proud Boys or Republican brown shirts, tiki torch Hawaiian shirt wearing Nazis from trying to take over the public square. They have been at the front line fighting for our freedom when a lot of moderate and lace doily Democrats have been, working with Republicans to pass crime bills that put minorities in jail or keep increasing the funding of police departments more and more and more. The Republican Party, en masse, is toxic. It is a toxic brand. Let me add this. I'm no longer a fan of third parties because they helped elect Trump. And while I completely believe in the right to third parties, and I actually believe in parliamentary systems or other forms of democracy that allow smaller parties to form an alliance and give people the right to vote how they want, and I also believe that people do indeed have the right to vote how they want, but I also believe that people have a responsibility to not only vote, but vote responsibly. And the fact of the matter is that if you vote for a Republican or you vote for a third party, it's not that you're throwing away your vote. You are voting for evil. And I don't give a shit what you say. You have that right, but I have the right, because of free speech, to call you a piece of shit. And the fact is, however, in this country we do have third parties, and the fact is that while we do have a two-party system, only the top two parties from a mathematical standpoint, especially at the federal level, have a realistic chance to win. And you know what? Because we do have these third parties, if you're still a Republican, you can go ahead and become a Libertarian. Or join the Constitutional Party. Or even if you have to, join the Democratic Party. I don't care who you join. But if you're a member of the Republican Party, at this point, You're a member of a fascist organization. Trump is a fascist. He uses fascist tactics. He uses fascist methodology. He uses fascist propaganda. He has surrounded himself with white supremacists and liars and enablers and crooks. And everyone in the party either is too afraid of him to have any guts to speak up, or too much guts or not enough guts to leave a toxic fascist party. The entire Republican Party is sick. And while we haven't reached a point where we need a constitutional amendment to declare the Republican Party illegal, we definitely are at a point where if you are culturally aware, if you're a member of the Republican Party in 2020, you're sick. You're disgusting. And we should remember that for the rest of our lives, where later when people try and clean up the Republican Party, no, you can't. You can't clean up this shit. There is no going back to normal for the Republican Party. There is no validation for these people. They put kids in fucking cages. They put dogs on the roof of their fucking car. These people are fucking monsters. And there is no fucking, well, there's that one good Republican. No, if you're still a member of the Republican Party, there is something wrong with you. You have a shriveled, toxic soul. And if you're a both-sider centrist that thinks both sides are the same, you're the same way. You're an enabler of fascism, and there is something toxic and fucking wrong with you. And I, for one, want nothing to do with you.
This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. Buy my book, Have Name Will Travel, at Amazon and other marketplaces. Copyright 2020 Red Anvil Amalgamated.
To fight the forces of evil!